everybody. To our live audience here, wonderful having you here this evening. Thank you for joining us. And also to you sitting on your couch in your slippers, welcome to you as well. It's wonderful having you. We know you're all logging on. I think when you log on now this evening, maybe tell us where you come from. And just say hi to everybody, and then, when you log on online. So wonderful having you all here, and really look forward to these quarterly investor events. And tonight's topic that we're going to be talking today is going to be called Smarter Investing, and it's hands-free property strategies that work. So we're going to unpack this. So as the investor that doesn't have to get up at midnight and fix toilets and worry about tenant dramas and those 42-page leasing contracts. So we're going to give you a different perspective when we know that time is the new essence today in this world. So we want to give you back your time today and explain how you can invest smarter and be more leaner in terms of your investments tonight. So we're looking for your interaction. We're looking for your questions. And so please feel free to fire away with questions. The way we're going to roll this evening, and before I introduce our panel here, is we got a few presentations this evening, and we'll then have a Q&A with each of the panelists. And we'll give you, at the end, I'm going to introduce you to some investors, some real-time investors who've invested alongside Wealth Assist using their hands-free property strategy. So you're going to hear it firsthand, and what they're doing as an investor. So wonderful having you all here. And as I say, we've got 4 expert speakers. We're going to have a 5th one who's also going to join us online, an investor, going to tell us their story. So on my right-hand side, I'm going to ask, first of all, Gerard van der Westhuizen. Gerard, do you just want to give a shout out? Well, you can give a shout out to these people right here, or you can also give it to the online audience as well. Do you want to maybe just introduce yourself, who you are and what you do, etc.?
Thank you very much, Neil. My name is Gerard. I'm heading up the investment side of the group, and we are really lucky to have you all here and attending tonight. We're looking forward to sharing some wonderful pieces of information. And we really want to ask you to sit back and make some notes and ask us the questions that you always wanted to. We hopefully will be able to answer it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Gerard. And Daniel Lombard, would you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. And yes, we really appreciate making the time to come here, because we had a nice discussion beforehand about how valuable time is. And if you first of all put time aside to learn something and grow in your knowledge, then it helps you. And tonight, hopefully, we can add some of that additional knowledge to you and show you some things which you haven't heard before, which can probably, because there's some of our things that we're going to touch on tonight, which is really special and a real game changer in the industry. So you're the first people that we probably will share it like on a platform like this. So, and a bit more in depth. So looking forward to share some of that information with you guys.
Great stuff, Daniel. And then we got Jandre Smit. Jandre, do you want to? He's our special guest tonight. So we always have a special guest every quarter. So Jandre, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, guys. Feel very special currently. Jandre Smit. I work in finance, and I dabble in tech and alternative viewpoints. I'm here basically just to have let's say, very rudimentary, very frank discussion about different structures and different vehicles that one has to invest. And let's say, ask a few questions that normally haven't been asked. What do people do wrong when they start? What are some of the things, practically speaking, that we can do to minimize some downside risk? And how can we have fun with investing? Investing, greatly speaking, is a long-term partner. So how can we befriend that over a long duration of time?
Excellent. Great having you, Jandre. And then we got Mark Dare. Mark is a seasoned investor. It's always great to have an investor here. He was chatting a little bit earlier and saying how long he's been in the game, more than 20 years. Wonderful having you, Mark. You want to maybe just give a little bit more background to yourself to everybody?
Thanks, Neil. So good evening, everyone.
With a-
Good evening to everyone online.
As Neil said, I've been a property investor for just over 20 years. Paid a lot of school fees in that time. But I've also been a wealth assist investor for just over 3 years. So I switched over from the not completely, but from the property investment in my own capacity to the wealth assist model. And I'll talk very briefly about that later, about my experience with wealth assist and Daniel and Gerard's teams. Thanks.
Wonderful. We look forward to hearing that. So, okay, so I'm going to hand over to Gerard. Gerard, you're gonna kick off tonight's presentation, and it's over to you. And then afterwards we'll get into Q&A.
Thank you very much. So I normally just bring in something from the investment side of things, and you know, if you look at this article that was written by the CEO of Sanlam Corporate, which means the pension funds side of things, he made a statement that said that you know, they assessed about 300,000 of their members. And then he came to the conclusion that the real financial retirement age of people is actually 80 and not 65. And that made me think. So what he said was, when they get to 65, now remember they're pension fund members, which means the employer is actually contributing to their retirement, mostly. And so they should be safer compared to the people working with other structures. And then they said that 25%, at the age of 65, 25% provision is in place. And when they calculated that you need another 15 years to actually get to your, what they call then financial retirement age, which means you will be able to survive after retirement, you know, fund yourself. So the principle of an employment contract says that you need to retire at 65. Now, what they are doing is they are saying to you that just know that the chances of you being fully funded for retirement is 75% less. And remember, this is on the backdrop where only 5% of South Africans can actually retire financially. And that made me think, but this is a big, big problem for financial planning. So I thought, okay, let's just do the numbers. What this means, if you look at what it is. So there's a bit of assumptions that you need pre-retirement. So this is a top 7% earner in South Africa. If you're earning a gross of 35,000, top 7%. Not many people knows it. It might be even top 5%. So after retirement, the assumption is that you will actually use 75% or will be able to live from a 75% of that, which is, I just worked a bit higher on 30,000. So the next one is that you will be able to increase your income at 8% per annum, because we all know that retirement inflation is higher than the normal country's inflation. Your withdrawal rate from your fund is 4.5%, and this fund is growing at 8%. So you should be fine in terms of numbers. Inflation is quite low, 4%, and I just made the assumption that the current age of this individual is 50 years old currently. So if you look at the numbers then, you'll see, you know, I wanted to plan that you would be able to survive for 20 years after your retirement date, which means if you're 65, you should be funding yourself till 85, and that should be fine. Now, the number in red there, 5.5 million, you will see is the current value. If you are 65 today and you retire and you want to live on 30,000 a month, you need about 5.5 million. And remember, your fund is growing at 10%, so we're quite aggressive actually with your retirement funds. In any case, John will confirm that, but just for the numbers' sake. So in future terms, if we would say I'm 15 years from now, at the age of 65, I'm going to retire, I need 10.2 million in those days. So, but the impact is really to look at, but now they say to me, I need to be planning to fund my, you know, the capital portion for my retirement for another 15 years, which means I still need 5.3 million in today's terms, but it means that I need 18 million, you know, in future, which means I need to actually save up another 8 million because of the extension of time. That is just to get my 25% up so that I can actually live off the full value that I should be living from. Now, if you look at the shortfall below, so you see the 5.5 on top, 25% is what Sanlam is saying the real provision is for most people that they assessed, which is 1.38 million. So you are in real trouble because clearly you haven't got enough money to invest to actually retire now. So then I did the calculation again, and that comes down to you still need now, because that's what they're saying, to get that 1.3 up in today's terms, up to 5.3, you need another 15 years. So the implications of that is 18.1 million minus the 2.5, which is the future value of that 1.3, is what you actually are standing at, and you need to create, which is there in the middle, another 15.5 million to be able to say, I'm going to retire on 30,000 at the age of 80.
Ridiculous.
Now, that's another 3.9 million in today's terms. But the problem is this, is that now I'm 65, my employer is saying to me, listen, you better stop. You will stop. But there is I don't know if you know about this court case that the courts actually allowed them not to cancel the agreement anymore. They're actually forcing the employers to say you will extend. If they don't want to retire, but that's a side note, but it was actually a legal precedent this year. So the reality is now that you have to still work or be able to work or earn an income from 65 to the age of 80. And you have to be able to invest from the age of 65 till the age of 80, additionally to your income and living, because you can't live from your pension yet. So suddenly I thought, now this is a game changer. If that's the facts of most South Africans, we need to start thinking differently of how we will be funding the 15 years from after retirement of 65 to 80. Because I need to create something that I can do, and I need to create additional capital so that if I get to the age of 90, I will be able to fund myself from that perspective. And, the shocking thing is the next step. Now, this John Lombard, I don't know who of you might be knowing him. He's an actuary. He's the head of Sanlam Savings. Now, John, I know, and they, from their actuarial perspective, got this figure from their books. And they said that death at 90 years of age is now a reality for one individual of a married couple currently in their 50s. So can I, just ask the audience and maybe you online, are you in your 50s? Are you married?
Yes.
The reality is one of you will most likely live until 90. Now, if you think about the people around you who died after 90 years of age, then I start to believe it. So I always say, if you've got a medical aid in South Africa, add 10 years, because it's not easy to die in South Africa. They will heal you. And it's an actual medical fact. But the reality is now that we've got a problem. We need from 80 onwards. So if you reach 80, you need another 10 to 15 years, which means, firstly, you have to provide for the surviving spouse. Secondly, generational wealth planning is now paramount. You actually need to start planning for it. And that means that the solution will lie somewhere else than your own skill. And this is the shocking figure that I just wanted to share for this evening. So there is a solution.
Start early.
Yeah, start early, compounding, But the problem is, the reason why the average age is 80 and not 65 as it should be, is because many people start late with employment. Unemployment contributes to that fact. It offers the timeline that you can invest in. Secondly, people don't invest. They live. The lifestyle inflation, as we've spoken previously on this channel, is the reality is that they live too high. They fund their lifestyle with credit. So we need to overcome this. And so obviously we are here tonight to speak on property. So property is a very good structure to overcome this dilemma. And I can actually show it to you and prove it to you. So if you look at real estate, the core pillars, you normally look at interest rates, your rental yield, and your capital growth of the property itself. If you look at normal investments, your inflation rate is very important. Your income that you can withdraw from that fund, and your fund growth is the key. So what we've done now, if you look at the top thing, when you talk about cash flow management, I just made the calculation to say to you guys that if you need 30,000 Rand from property, this is what you'll need. On the left-hand side, you'll see there's 4.5 million. Now that's a normal buy to let. That's the amount that you will need to be owning in property that's paid cash off and that you can live from on an 8% net yield, which some might say is very positive. If you're in Cape Town, it'd say, well, that's average. We might be netting higher, but I worked on 8%. And that will then give you a 30,000 Rand per month. Now, with us, we've got a product called Recovery. Now, that product is giving you a 13.75% net yield per annum, which means that it will give you the 30,000 Rand, but you'll need 2.6 million instead of 4.5. So the bottom line, if you look at the pillar of rental yield, it is actually critical to understand that yield, percentage-wise, will make a dramatic impact in terms of how much property you will need to live on. So, but this is, if you compare it, and that's what I just wanted to, under the blue numbers, wanted to show. The net asset value at 65, 15 years from now, on a recovery is 5 million, on a normal buy-to-let portfolio is 8.7. In 80 years, at the age of 80, 30 years from now, it's 9.8 on a recovery, and a normal buy-to-let portfolio will be 16.8 million.
For the higher amount.
So in other words,
They
if I,
started with the higher
yeah,
amount.
well, the reality is this, is that you need to provide 30 years from now instead of 15 years from now from property, an income stream, and the income stream at that stage will have to be on the value. In other words, a 16.8 million property is currently worth 4.5 million. In 15 years, a 8.7 million Rand property is currently worth 4.5 million. So what I'm also saying to you guys is that if you can generate, remember, if you can generate a property portfolio, there's a leg of, there's a tree, as they would say to me, that is actually planted and it grows. And then there's fruit coming from it. So this is a portfolio. This tree, you give a bit of water, you make sure it grows well, but the reality is you don't have to work on it. You can still work something else, the lands, plowing, that type of thing. So the reality is that you need to think of two things. How can I still earn an income, and how can I create this scenario where my capital is settled? Because if you look at the previous slide, you will see that the amount of cash that you will need was 18 million, right? At the age of 18, where you should be able to almost come right in terms of a net yield of 13.75 of 40% less.
Yeah.
So it's a diversification approach that you need to look at, but the realities are now that if the average age is now 80, that you must aim for, you better manage your expenses, your cash flows, because it's a real dilemma. And that's my concern, speaking to clients every day and knowing that the amounts are just enormous that we need to provide for. So I just wanted to throw that in so that you can see that there can be a plan, but we need to sit down and do it and plan it for you, or with you maybe, because it's without you, it's not possible to build a property portfolio. You are the biggest asset in your portfolio, I always say, and this is one model of building and using it.
Excellent. I've always said when to retire is to expire. We actually mentioned it a little bit early on. And I mean, we're in a world of, there's more entrepreneurs now in South Africa. So people don't have jobs, they're not working for a company, so they're not expected to retire. Yeah. It's their business, it's their life, it's what they built. and if they're living a life of clarity and purpose and they're enjoying themselves, why retire?
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, but the option is nice though.
And that's a,
I mean, you can only have so many pina coladas on a beach, you know.
trust me, Marcus got a few plans where I think he's not going to have them all.
But I want to come back to the topic because it's interesting. You mentioned the 80-year-old, and the reason is because people are not safe. So what are people doing wrong? Where they're falling short financially? Just let's revisit that again.
Well, I think firstly, the debt, paying interest to the banks on capital, on loans that is not of capital nature. In other words, I've explained in the past the vehicle decision. The impact of financing a vehicle of R1 million, which we see daily on the roads. I mean, do you see these Toyotas? Sorry,
And it's only
maybe it's
Toyota you're talking
yeah, maybe it's a Volkswagen, but the reality is it's $1 million a pop. And I work out quickly, and I said to myself, "Wait a minute, there goes R10 million."
Yeah.
I mean, that's the loss in future.
It's
So-
compound interest in
future
reverse. It's
So-
compound
yeah.
interest in reverse.
So-
yeah.
I was listening to this billionaire. He's got quite a big portfolio, and he says it's very simple. The reason why the wealthy is healthy. The reason why the wealthy is rich is because they're safe. And the reason why the middle class is the middle class is because they fund through loan their lifestyle. And if we can change that perspective, I mean, buying a flat of $1 million over 20 years adds another 2 million of interest that you're paying. So just think about if you can save $1 million by paying it off quicker. $1 million, that's another flat.
No.
So I think cash flow management upfront is as important as managing it after you've invested.
I just think we spoke about it the other day as well. It took an example of a person who earns exactly that salary, the average one that you used, okay? And the fact that they've got credibility. What can you use your credibility to buy? That grows. Not a lot. But one thing is property. If you earn 30,000, just to use a simple example, and that means that you qualify or should qualify if you haven't got an impaired credit record, you should qualify for R1 million. Who has got that R1 million without their credibility in your pocket? I know there's a few guys that do, but it is a very small percentage of the country's credit consumers. So I just did a test for a lady once and said, "You are working for how many years? You earned a salary for so much." She's now 50. She hasn't bought a property ever in her life. She's just been paying rent, all those type of things. And I showed her, if we just use your credibility 10 years ago, where would you be today? And I mean, that's a scary picture of people just not knowing that they can just use their credibility to actually unlock this kind of solution for the future.
So let's talk about the wealth assist. And I know Daniel's going to talk a little bit more about the wealth assist formula and that. But let's just talk a little bit about, how investors using the wealth assist method, and, they want to get high returns, but they want also less risk. I think that's important. But, and the role of debt restructure and how that can be a powerful tool as part of that. Do you want to maybe just explain that?
Well, maybe I can just, as a quick intro, I think the reality is that if you start a business, I always say if you want to be in property, you better start a business in property. There's so much skill. I mean, we just heard from Mark, the school fees that is paid. And many has actually paid it in the last interest, about 15 years back when the interest went up to 23%. They lost so much because they had no idea what they were doing. They were speculators. Okay, so the reality is, I think the wealth assist model puts you in a safe environment where you've got the structure and the skill around the table, the IP in the contract so that you're actually protected on a downside. And I think that is where it is drastically different than any others. There is always challenges with property. Don't for 1 minute think there's no challenge. There's always, it's just how you can mitigate the level of risk and losses at that moment. And at this stage, there is struggles in some of the deals, but we haven't lost yet. And that I think is one of the biggest differences.
And then we'll hear from Mark a little bit now. But I think we're going to hand over to Daniel now, and he's going to talk about the Wealth Assist model.
Great. Thank you. So you actually touched on it now. And I think the key is knowledge helps you to avoid things. Okay. And then at the same time, taking no risk, you will also never make money. So that's just part of the investment strategies in the world. I know everybody says the higher the risk, the lower the risk, the lower the returns, the higher the risk, the higher the returns. It's in most cases like that. And we are fortunate, like with Mark, I've been in property investment for a bit over 40 years. So I've also paid a lot of school fees. And I think what helps Wealth Assist in the current status and all our other team members who's joining in our risk committee, because every single transaction get pre-vetted. Okay. So we look at it. We've made the model. We did it in such a way that we said, okay, what is the parts that's actually a risk? What is a risk in any property transaction? How can we address that? Okay. And we started from there, starting to build it. So first of all, we made sure that it is properly pre-vetted. And I tell you, I bought on auctions many years of my life. And I remember myself going to an auction and then I pitch up there. You can only get access to the property half an hour beforehand of that at that property. Now you have to do all your maintenance, budgets, everything in that half an hour before they start reading the contract, and then you're going to start bidding. Okay. So the idea of that, we learned that if the more time we can spend and have a proper research. So today, when we talk about pre-vetted, risk mitigated is a proper valuation, things like that. And I'm talking about professional valuation. If it's an on-sale product with us, we make sure that we have at least 3 agents that give specialists in that area that give assessments, things like that, which all that information together with your maintenance quotations, whatever they may be on that property, upfront exactly that. You have all that information available on the website, obviously just for our accredited and private clients, obviously not for outsiders or whatever. So they can get onto that specific property, see all those things, see the cash flows, every single thing, purely to say that you can save a lot of time in the process. And when we talk about on the shelf, I mean, on the shelf, good idea is, why do you go to Woolies? Why don't you go to the closest Spaza shop or something else where why do you want to buy Woolies? Say again? Prices. Not prices, quality. Yes. And another thing together with that quality is when they say organic, you trust they've done their homework. It's organic. Okay. And that's the point. Okay. So what is similar what we do? We make sure that the rentals that you can receive in that area, whatever, that's what the rental can be. This is how it works. Then we talk about things like your predictable, and when I actually read it the first time, I was like, predictable, contractually guaranteed returns, and you say equals property. No, most of the time not. Okay. So if you don't do proper real estate investments, the first thing is most of the guys always talk about the nice deals that are under fire. And they don't speak about that half of them that never worked out, you know. And unfortunately, that is a lot of times like that. And what we've started doing is starting to build into these contracts. We made sure that we have predetermined returns. Made sure that, and if I can use an example of what you see there, on all our buy and lease back products, you earn your income, for instance, during the term. Like you saw there, 13.75 is prime plus 3 is what your rental will be. That means you are cash positive in day one. Then from there on, when you run into a situation where there may be a challenge, you have 5% capital growth that you still have to earn from a 25% equity at least, if not less, because our averages are more to 55 to 65 in a whole, if I can say all our deals together, that will be the average that we have at the moment. So that means you're sitting with somewhere between 25 and 30% of equity to cover your 5%. So the risk for you, and that's why we are fortunate that none of our investors ever lost their money. And that's the capital has not been an issue on the end of the day. And I think if you can do that with any property investment, you're at a good start. Then obviously the management, zero tenant / management, that type of thing. Now, again, I want to touch on something specific. At the top there, you'll see the new full-term rental warranty. Have you ever signed a lease where you have the lease money paid up front for the full term? Okay, doesn't exist. So that's a serious game changer that we are sharing with you tonight. We have about a month and a half, 2 months ago, implemented this, where we've actually now, when we do these transactions, we will have the rental for the full rental term on trust upfront. So the chances of that tenant ever failing to pay monthly will only be if the person in this office forgot to push the button to pay you. Okay, so that's the only way. Obviously, we have learned and we paid a lot of prices in the past with having these kind of situations. So we did a bit of a flip where the client or our tenants, like you mostly know, is people who recover. Okay, so because they normally would have paid for themselves, they would have paid we would have paid the debt, and then they would have paid the rental monthly. And then we found that they will pay the debt, but they will sometimes not pay the investor, which is a problem for us. So we started flipping that, and on the end of the day, made sure that we have the rental up front. So now if he doesn't pay his debt, then he's not able to recover, which means we can start at a very early stage of the matter and sell the property on to a third party. So that really changes everything. Okay, so in the future, definitely what you will receive as opportunities. I think we still have 1 or 2 that's out of that box that we finalized, but that is more or less. And then obviously, for me, close to my heart is the social impact, which we make with every single client, and helping them to recover, keep their homes, but at the same time for you making above average return. Yeah, I think that gives you a good idea. Then if we talk about, I'm just quickly tonight we're just gonna like to have real oversight of our products, but it's very important for our investors, people who want to participate with Wealth Assist, that you start understanding the type of product, because you've got specific things that you can do. You've either got cash, or you've got mortgages, or you've got access bonds that you can draw from, wherever your money comes from that you utilize to make these investments will obviously determine what kind of these products you can actually access and use. So the green ones, for those who already registered and Private investors or accredited investors with us will know that's our on-sale products. So that means it's somebody that probably applied, but and just want to unlock some capital, have made up their mind that they actually want to sell that property already, but they haven't got the time to wait until that happens. Otherwise, they'll run into trouble. Second thing is those clients that on the end of the day can not recover and which came to us with the help and say, please help me, but I want to keep my property. But we say, sorry, we can't lie to you. You can't recover at the moment. And it won't be the wise thing for you to do, because now you're going to try and keep your property and it's going to cost you a lot of money. And on the end of the day, we're going to sell it in anyway, because you're not recoverable. So those kind of clients all moves to what we call our on-sale products. Okay, that's similar, like you call a flip in the property industry. So you buy it with a purpose to resell it. That's the simplicity of it. If you look at the various products there, it gives you an idea of what exactly can be done cash. So every product, so like the JV sale is typically a client with a lot of equity in his property, but he needs to get rid of it because he needs to address debt, medical expenses, whatever the trauma, whatever the situation may have been, and they want to unlock that capital. Now, on all of them, the on-sale products, and this is very important, they've got a fixed return. So if the transaction is 12 months, okay, and you have, for instance, let's call it, I'm just going to use R1 million transaction. Your returns on that specific transaction, call it, is 17%. You will make 170,000 rand profit. But yes, the nice part of it, it's fixed. Okay. So if we sell it in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, doesn't matter what it is, your profit is 170,000. So the shorter term we use to actually on-sell that property, your returns will climb, like as you can see there, in the 6 months will be then 34% per annum instead of the 17% if it takes 12 months. Okay, so for people who want capital growth, this is mostly, these products are all capital growth products. We always have either a covering bond, transfer of the property, or if it's an installment sale, a recordal over the title. So you are well protected with a property-backed assets as property as an asset that backs that transactions. Then if you look at your buy and leaseback products, this is mostly, and there you'll see that nice purple picture there. You see that in the future? Nice rental warranty, guys, for the full term. Okay. So this will give you, I'm just going to touch on, for argument's sake, the recovery and the for sale by owner. The two products are exactly the same, apart from one specific thing. And that is that the recovery, the client have already been predetermined that he can qualify and he can buy back and he will be able to recover. And the guy with a for sale by owner will say, sorry, sir, you currently don't. You do have an income that's enough to cover your rental, do whatever you have to, but you have got 9 months to prove the fact that you can recover yourself. Mostly those are people with self-employed, things like that hasn't got a fixed salary, those type of things, but have a business and have got a proven track record, but they want to increase that, their income before they can buy back. So then they've got 9 months to recover. If they don't, they actually already agree upfront, we're selling the house from month 9. There we go. All right. The other two is just if we use an installment sale to do that instead of a normal transfer. And it's the same thing as the previous one. Then we have our I wouldn't call it out of the box, but different, because I think most of our stuff is out of the box. That's the problem.
It's the same.
So the restart product is a client who then can't recover at all. He've already accepted that. He says, please, but I just want to rent my home for which I stayed in for the next 3 years, and he can afford the rental. Then you buy that property at 85% of market value. That's the nice part. You still have a chance for 3 years. If he somehow wins the lotto, he just want to have that opportunity. As there's not an option agreement attached to that transaction. but there is, in that case, a option clause in the lease that has got a right to buy it back within a 3-year term. All right. So that is your restart product. And then you have your recovery bond, which is a straightforward, as if you do it through the bank. We have to register you as an investor with the National Credit Act and those type of things. And then obviously we have what we call our auction buys, where we make offers to the bank prior, and the bank don't accept those offers. Then we go to the auction and buy those properties. And we've done quite a few over the years of that. These days, I don't know who saw the latest MoneyWeb article, but I'll circulate it a bit. It's quite interesting. And then about Nedbank's issues with the auctions now. So it's also not a easy thing to do these days. And then we have got our assist to own. It's basically all our clients that can actually not currently buy a house because of 1 or 2 small credit issues. We buy the properties from developers and so forth at discounted values, and we sign a rent to buy with them, and they take transfer within 1 or 2 years from today. So that's in a nutshell. Please, in the near future, follow. We're going to go into these products a bit more in detail on some of our seminars for the future, so that you can actually really understand which ones is built for what you want to achieve and get to your goals and your whatever at that stage.
Okay, great. Thanks, Daniel. I think it's quite a lot to absorb, but I think it's all important stuff to grasp. But and I think to get to the detail, I would suggest go to the webinar and get all that detail. I want to hand over to Jandre now.
Sorry, I just want to mention, Neil, those of you who can get the link of the Real Estate Investor magazine, please get the July version of it. It's actually got this whole thing in, except the returns on the right-hand side. Okay, but we will also circulate.
So read Real Estate Investor magazine, rei.co.za, you'll get it there.
Agreed.
Jandre, you're a chartered accountant, you're a tax specialist. You're going to take us through structures, legal structures. So I'm going to hand over to you, because this is where the interesting bits come in. So over to you.
Sure. Okay, so I'd like to take a bit of a, let's say, less conventional approach, right? So when I'm not very fond of reading, right? I understand it's very important. So I read a lot of technical things, but I very seldomly read any recreational books or anything like that. So in grade, I think 10, I read a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. Very, very interesting book. And one of the things I recall just philosophically was, one character asked another, how much of your salary do you earn? How much is yours, right? And the argument that the person said from the initial standpoint was, well, 100%, right? I come in, do the labor, it's all mine. And then they take them through practical examples and say, well, actually, no, you've got to pay for your housing, and you've got to pay for food, and then you've got to pay for, all of the different things that we pay to live, right? And they had a different approach in which they said, whenever you get paid, pay yourself first. Right? And that's the principle of saving, right? And so if we look at, let's say, investing as a hobby, as opposed to a job, right? We look at, or I would liken it to somebody who's going on a journey, right? And so in that journey, we've got a set of different vehicles, right? So those are legal entities. We've got a few words of wisdom, things that we do wrong, and then there's some practical comparison, right? So to start off with the vehicles, we look at, let's say, the utility, right? How does your motorbike differ from your car? How does that differ from, let's say, a bicycle, etc.? We'll look at some common mistakes, and then we'll do a comparison, right? So the one that, I was asked to talk about specifically was trusts. What is a trust, right? So that's the first question. So a trust is a quasi-legal person, which means that it both is and isn't, depending on the scenario. So if it trades, it's a legal person, it does certain things, right? Alternatively, it's a collection of assets, right? So because of that, a trust has a unique principle attached to it called the conduit principle, which means that if it's merely a collection of assets, who owns those assets? And that's then determined by the trustees. It's paid to the beneficiaries. Okay. why do we use a trust? Right? So trust is primarily a vehicle for stewardship. If I'm a parent and I want to ensure that my kids are planned for, right? I will accumulate assets in a trust, and I will have, let's say, a letter of wishes, which then becomes my trust deed, right? And it'll say, I want little Timmy to go to university. I'm going to accumulate assets, as Gerard properly stated. You know, it accumulates over time, etc. And the important thing there is, it's out of my estate. It's no longer mine. I'm giving it up, either through donation or sale or whichever, right? And one must remember that that is its own legal party. Same is true for companies. And what we're effectively trying to do there is we're trying to earmark assets for a specific goal, right? Some of the benefits of using a trust is there's no estate taxes because it's not yours. There's no executor costs because it's not your property. And then you don't have to deal with the incredible delays that we unfortunately now have whenever we deal with a deceased estate, right? Protection from creditors. So because it's its own thing, your assets are protected. And then the income may vest in beneficiaries. So to use the example of Timmy going to college, right? If a property is purchased in a trust and the income vests in little Timmy, he will start paying tax, you know, from the moment he's born, and then through whichever means that money is pulled, and then by the time they go to university, that's where the whole trust fund baby comes from, right? That's the term. Some of the disadvantages: higher admin, right? High tax rates if it's not distributed. Loss of natural person deduction. So as an example, if you purchase a property in as an individual, you get certain tax breaks like your primary residence. Whereas if you do that in a trust, even if you distribute it, you don't get that benefit. And then the other thing that I know every South African is always afraid of, SARS scrutiny. So what used to happen a few years ago was anything that happened in a trust was basically a black box. And SARS has kind of changed their approach. They've said, no, but you actually do need to have your affairs in order. You need to tell us what's going on. We'll do some checks, etc., which I think is all fair and reasonable, right? We've got private companies. What does the private in private company mean, right? It means private in terms of participation, not in terms of information. So what that practically means is if I've got a private company, let's say I'm the sole shareholder, right? And I then add Daniel, then I have to be part of that decision. If now I want to add Gerard, then Daniel has to be part of that decision, right? So that's what it is. It's a separate legal entity, which means that entity gets sued effectively, right? Unless, you know, in certain cases, let's say the directors were very negligent, right? You're protected by the Companies Act, which is a pro, but there's additional red tape, which is a con. A partnership, it's basically a bunch of us around the table decide we're going to start a new venture. We're going to determine how we're going to share those profits and those losses. It's not its own separate entity. So we all get our shares and we account for that. Yeah. And then the last one is simply investing through yourself as the vehicle. Some of the benefits are, you know, you're less of a risk of, let's say, liquidation. So you can get full bonds. There's less admin. But unfortunately, it's very difficult to pool resources. Okay. Let's talk about some common risks in investing. And I have perfected all of these in my personal capacity. So lack of research, jumping into an investment without understanding the assets. So all of my friends in Luno, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Over trading, so frequently buying and selling investments. So we buy a property and then 6 months later we're selling that. Then we're into bonds, and then 6 months later we're into crypto, and then 6 months later we're into something else. The problem with that is we never get to a point where we fully understand the asset class. And because we keep selling, there's somebody who facilitates that sale and that purchase, and they take money when we're buying or when we're selling. It's like estate agents. They don't care when you sell your house. They always make their money just as long as somebody sells something, right? Emotional decisions, that's allowing fear, greed, you know, the fear of missing out to drive your choices. So we go and we purchase a house because all of our friends are getting houses. And, you know, we get married because all our friends get married, and then we all buy everything in community of property. Great, right? And then we're chasing quick returns. We've all seen that. We don't understand the asset. Ignoring diversification. So we're saying we're either only going into property because, you know, that's all we know, or we're only going into stocks because, you know, stocks have always done well. They couldn't possibly do poorly in the future. All of these are obvious lies. And then the biggest risk is simply not starting. All right. So
That's a very true one.
yeah. So to align to Gerard's initial, let's say, analysis of retirement planning, the effect of compound interest is quite an interesting one, right? Often called what the eighth wonder of the world, right? You meet people and they struggle under these incredibly unfair credit card situations, carrying interest at 22% or whatever the case may be. But I mean, that's also true for creating wealth. Like it splits the other way around as well. And so I think that's why it's better to align it as a journey, as a hobby, right? Okay, some investment fundamentals to combat these risks, or these mistakes. So firstly is understanding the risk and reward. If I'm buying a property and I'm leasing it out, I should understand that property needs to be insured because it sometimes hails and it's sometimes, you know, not every electrician is up to standard, as an example, right? I've got risk of vacancies and all of that. So whenever I invest in an asset class, I need to understand where that's coming from, or I need to partner with people who manage that on my behalf, and I then get a lesser return, right? Time horizon. So generally, if we've got a longer time horizon, and we're more familiar and we do our due diligence, we do better, right? Asset allocation. So distributing our investments across different asset classes is great because if there's a property downturn, we'll probably feel that in stocks, but we're less likely to feel that in bonds, right? Patience. Patience works in most aspects of life, especially in investment. And then one of the things that Pat spoke about is compounding investment. So the moment we start earning good investments and we take the money that we get from there, we don't use it for personal consumption and we allow that to grow, it's a hedge against lifestyle inflation. So lifestyle inflation, just as a simple term, is I start a new job, I earn some money. I'm a student, I live on somebody's couch, right? And 2 years later, I earn a 50% increase or 100% increase. Now, all of a sudden, I need a new car, I need a new cell phone, I need all of these things. And so one of the best ways we can protect ourselves from overspending is to commit a part of our budgets to saving and then having that money grow, compounding, right? So, and then one of the other things that we look at is market timing, right? Versus consistency. So generally speaking, it's better to be consistent in a market rather than trying to time the market. Better and smarter people than myself have tried and they've consistently failed. So it's better to, let's say, apply some diligence, spread out investments over a longer term. Right. If we compare let's say the wealth assist investment, so I've done a bit of due diligence on them, right? And I've compared that with, let's say, traditional property investments. So traditional property investments, great. You're buying something that is unlikely to evaporate. It's going to be there for a while. It serves a real purpose, right? Somebody lives in it. It houses families, etc., right? If you buy that property, you have full control over that, for better or for worse. You're holding a long-term asset. So if it's a property that you live in, or it's an area that you manage, then good luck moving that property with you. That's not going to happen, right? And you have to be comfortable managing tenants and different personalities of people. So that's investing in property as is. If you go the wealth assist route, you basically say, I don't want full control. I want somebody to manage this on my behalf because I'm busy spending my time in a different way. I'm either spending it with family, spending it on my career to get higher returns there, I'm studying further, etc. Fine, those are also investment choices. You then have a team that's vetted a contract, as Donnell said. It's less of a hassle. It's more flexible. So now we're in a cycle where technology is advancing rapidly. What's expected of us every year seems to double, right? And when we look at investments, generally speaking, the longer we go out in the future, where we're fixed into a contract, the higher our risk. Yes, if we invest over a longer period, that's fine, but we need a certain degree of flexibility. So generally, if you want full control, long-term asset holding, do a traditional property investment. If you want the benefits of property, maybe a smaller return, maybe a greater return, go the wealth assist route.
Excellent. Could I ask you to pass your microphone over to Mark? And I would like the audience to just start thinking about, if you've got some questions in mind, maybe this is a good time to write them down. And for you online, I know we do have a couple of questions from you online. Encourage you to please fire away with questions. And because we're going to head towards our Q&A session now, which is normally our most robust and interesting part of the day, because you must have a question. If you don't, how would you know? So first of all, Mark, you've been a traditional investor for many, many years, and you pivoted. You switched, and I'd just like to know, what was it that made you move from being a traditional investor, let's call it the wealth assist way?
Thanks, Neil. So, very, very brief background is, as Neil mentioned at the beginning, I've been a property investor for just over 20 years. And Jean-Ray spoke about the two types of investing, the traditional investment model of buying properties. That's what I've been doing for 20 years. And the second route is going the wealth assist route. So I have a foot in both of those worlds. As also we spoke about earlier, is I've paid lots of school fees. You mentioned about common mistakes in investing. I think I've made them all. I've added some new mistakes to that repertoire that can possibly be made in property investing, but it's all part of the learning process. What stood out for me and why I was attracted to Wealth Assist was, at the point in time about 3 or 4 years ago, I was looking for a different structure for my properties. Many of my properties I've purchased in my own name as a sole proprietor. And some of the seminars I was going to, they were saying you must move your properties into a trust, move them into a PTY, move them into a combination of a trust and a PTY. And I was really confused by all of this. And one of the webinars I attended was a Wealth Assist webinar. And I contacted Daniel after that, and we got talking about this. And there were a few things that really attracted me specifically to the Wealth Assist model, and we've heard it repeated over tonight, is it's hands-free. So being a property investor for many years in residential property, sure, I have a property manager that manages my property, all the real hard stuff, the lease agreements and the maintenance and the evictions and all of that. But it still requires a lot of intellectual input and a lot of oversight and management from me of the properties, what's happening, what are the returns, etc. And the hands-free portion of Wealth Assist really attracted me. With properties, traditional properties, some of my properties get a 4%, 5% capital growth per annum. Some get a 15% growth per annum, but there's not one that can, when I buy it, that'll say to me, you will get a 17% return contractually. That really attracted me to the Wealth Assist model, because contractually, at least a 17% return was amazing. And the third thing that attracted me was, and Daniel mentioned it earlier this evening as well, is the social impact of what they do and the way that they structure their products to actually assist people who might otherwise, families that might otherwise lose their properties. So there's a philanthropical approach or philanthropical thing and a thrust to this as well, which attracted me to their model. And as I said, I've been a Wealth Assist investor for just over 3 years, still have the original property portfolio as well. But if I could choose over and go back 20 years, I think I'd go for the Wealth Assist hands-free investment model because of the returns and the hands-freeness of it. What stood out about how has this supported my goals towards earlier retirement? I think I'm way too old to look at early retirement. But according to what Daniel said this evening, is the real retirement age in South Africa is about 80 years. So I think I might still be able to retire early based on that. One of the things I think that in one of my early discussions with Daniel and Gerard that's really stuck with me as well is Daniel said is a lot of investors are either capital cash rich and time poor, or they're capital cash poor and time rich. And I think as an investor, property investor, I want both. I want to be capital cash rich and time rich, meaning I've got lots of time because of my investing. And I do believe that the Wealth Assist model can largely contribute to that kind of scenario for investors. Thanks, Neil.
No, excellent. Thank you for that. I think it's really been eye-opening, and it's a matter of that, different strokes for different folks, and whatever suits that particular investor. And we've heard now firsthand from Mark in terms of how it works for him. Do we have Ferial online? It's Ferial.
Yes,
Ferial, can you hear us?
yes, I can hear you, and hopefully you can see me now as well.
Great, wonderful having you, Ferial. So
Nice.
you sitting in Scotland, is that right?
I am indeed.
Okay, Ferial.
And we have for a change some good weather.
Oh wow! Have you got a wee dram there with you?
No, just unfortunately drinking some water. Different grams for me.
Okay, we'll call that a wee dram of water then. So, Ferial, I think thank you for joining us, and we've been just heard Mark in terms of his investment experience with Wealth Assist, and we're keen to hear. You're sitting in Scotland, you investing first of all in South Africa, and so maybe you could just share how has this sort of hands-free method worked for you with you sitting in another jurisdiction completely?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say hi to everybody out there. And of course, it's been very interesting listening to the rest of you, and Mark in particular sharing a lot of your your experiences. But essentially, I think it's not that difficult for me because I am South African. Well, I'm now British too, but what I mean is South Africa isn't a foreign market for me. But of course, being here, I often have all the challenges that come with, moving funds back and forth, all those kind of things. But essentially for me, really, all of this started because I, know Daniel for the last 30 years. And yes, I don't look like I'm old enough to know him for 30 years, but I do. And what happened is that I remember a few years ago, I was going through a divorce, and Daniel, we sold one of our properties. So yes, like many of you, my partner and I were in property development and investment and all this kind of stuff. So this wasn't all foreign to me, but I had the same experiences like Mark just described and others, where it's actually bloody hard work, and you actually need to know your stuff. Oftentimes I've had people thinking, we could just go invest in property and it's going to be so much fun and I'm going to make so much money. I'm like, yeah, okay. Because there's so many aspects to investment. And if you don't know, and just like that little list that you guys read off, I made all of those same mistakes. And for me, I also want to be, cash rich and time rich. And for me, it's not about going to sip pina coladas on the beach. But actually, I do love doing that too. Ray, for me, it's about, I think that, so what I do is I'm the CEO at the moment for an international NGO. And we work with cities all around the planet. And our job is to help them become places where life can thrive again. Right now, you guys live in South Africa. And so when I visit there, I'm like, you got to put your bag here, do that. You can't drive, you can't. And I just sit there and I think to myself, this is like a prison. And part of that is because very often we're taking care of ourselves and not understanding that there is this other aspect of life that we're so deeply interconnected with. And it's all these other people that live around you, which means if you're not going to take care of that scenario, and that's essentially the work that I do, then it starts to invade into your life. And eventually you're held up at gunpoint, you're, whatever, all the stuff that you guys experience there. And for me, it's like, this is why this investment is so important, because it wasn't when Daniel spoke to me about this and I'm going through this divorce and I'm thinking, this is all money that I've got and I really need to invest this well, but I don't want to go through all that property stuff again. So I remember Daniel saying to me, and at the time we had sold some houses and stuff, and some money was just sitting in an account in South Africa. And he said to me, you realize that you could have been earning like 2 years of, money on this? And I was like, okay, so let's talk, because I think I was a little bit shell-shocked before then, and tried a few other investments. And then he said to me, well, let's do this. And it's been just 3 years now, just over 3 years. And because I had invested before with Daniel, so I trusted his ability to do that. As I said, 30 years we've been investing in many different kinds of ways, and Daniel's always really delivered. Not always on time, but yeah, delivered, and I trusted that. So there we went, did that, and here we are 3 years later, and they've more than doubled my money. So I'd say pretty good investment. And yes, I mean, is there challenges? Are there things like, systems that sometimes don't work and things like that? Yes. But I think what I enjoy about doing this with Wealth Assist is, firstly, also the philanthropic part of this. So firstly, I'm here trying to make the world better. And Daniel knows that. And so for me, it's like, I can't really invest into things that's not making the world better. So for me, if you're out there and you're wanting to invest and listening to this, investment is really, and it's not just about making money, because you can make money in all kinds of ways. But how do you do that with being able to sleep well at night? How do you do that with a conscience? How do you do that with actually even this very investment that I'm making can also make the world better? So this was really important for me, that when I did decide to do an investment, that it was about this. And I think Wealth Assist really offers the opportunity for you to help others, and at the same time, for me, it's about funding what I do in the world. And of course, as I said, I'm trying to make the world better. So yeah, I think that for those out there thinking right now and thinking about what are some of the ways you can do this, you can either go the hard route, which we've tried, and it is hard work, and you kind of really have to focus on this when you're doing it as a business. And I've done it as a business. And for me, then this kind of hands-free, do you know what? I give them my money. They do what they want. I know it's safe. And we've got this pre-contract going, all of that. It just feels like it ticks all the boxes. And yes, I still have to be checking out. I still have to be looking at it. I still have to be involved, but I don't have to be on top of all of this, which helps me do what I do. So yeah, that would be me answering, or at least attempting to answer that question.
Great. I
Thank
think,
you.
Ferial, you've actually shared a lot of things which in fact, all the questions that I was thinking about, you actually managed to cover every aspect of it. And I think you are a good example of somebody who's looking for that kind of investment. As we mentioned earlier on, it's not for everybody. There's different strokes for different folk, but it fits your investment strategy. You've got more sleep at night, better stability, great returns. And that's what you're looking for in an investment. So thank you very much, Ferial. We've got an audience over here. Do you want to give them a wave or a message to South Africans from Scotland? I can see it's still daylight there, isn't it?
It is. And it stays day for quite a while here during the summer. So sometimes 11, 12, you're sliding the sun up. Which is great for partying, but bad for sleeping. But yeah.
Ferial, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate your input. Maybe stay online,
Yeah, sure,
and there might even be a question that'll come your way. We're now opening up the questions. I've got a bunch of questions which I have to go through from the audience, and also with our online audience as well. So please hang around as we start dealing with this. We've got our panel here right now. So first of all, I would like to ask anybody here live, is there a question from the audience? If you had a question, what would it be? And we just need to maybe pass the mic around. We do need a mic around. Christoph, you don't mind doing that, do we have a question from the audience? There we go. Do we just pass the mic there? No, that's fine. It's all good. Yeah.
Realize that when I walked in, I'm going to be like, oh, this one's going to come.
Right.
It all sounds good. 17% plus, wonderful. You don't get that. And so firstly, I would like something more specific, like what sort of properties, syndications, what size, how can you guarantee that return? What is minimum amount, maximum amounts? For what periods? Can you be a bit more specific? Are all your products different or?
Yeah. Let's start with your first question. So what's that first one?
Sorry, my very first one is how long have you actually been around and operating?
13 years as Assist Group or Wealth Assist, and another, I think it's about 7 years or so, which we previously was with previous partners. So that gives you an idea.
Good.
In the specific industry, for me and Gerard, I think we have our bios. So we'll send you the bios that give you a bit of background on how long in dealing in the specific market. If mine specifically is in the distressed property market for more than 35 years, and dealt with all the banks, all the things. So can give you a bit of background on that. Yeah. Next one.
I asked you lots of questions. Sorry.
I want to finish that list of yours quickly. Or do you want to send them to me and I'll answer that?
I'm saying now specific properties, like size-wise.
So we buy in all the areas in the metro cities, okay? Not in smaller towns. We did in the initial stages until we've learned our lessons through it, and through a lot of other property transactions, we've done the same. We buy anything from properties that's worth R1 million or whatever up to, I think the largest one recently value was that we got involved in was I think 45 million. So it's in all parts of the market, commercial, in a lesser way. Most of them are residential, covering all cities, but every transaction, and I think the answer to your question, which will give you a bit of peace of mind, is that anything on our metrics, we've got a metrics that we buy, that we participate in transactions. For instance, if it goes over 5 million, we will not go higher than, call it 60% of market value. If it is above 10 million, we will go lower than 50%. Things like that. So we'll never go to exposures that the higher the price range, sometimes, unfortunately, the more the risk, because there's less buyers in that price range. Everybody buys properties. If you want to sell a property for 2.5 million, everyone can afford to buy it, or most people. So those type of things we take in consideration. We've got the 75% of market value and lower, and that means all costs inclusive, means all your transfer fees, those type of things, except your own mortgage. If you use a mortgage registration, that you'll pay yourself, but all the other costs are inclusive in those transactions. Then how can we actually do it? It's actually that same answer of the previous that I just gave on, if you buy something at 65% of market value, then it's easy to guarantee 5% capital growth, okay? Because you've got equity of 35% of, or 25% to cover the 5%, like I've explained there on that. And that means that most of your income is during the time. Now, with this new warranty that we have built in, you don't even have the risk of a tenant not paying. You understand? It's covered for the full period. So your risk is really, really low, although your returns are still very high, which is why I'm saying it's not always high risk, high returns. This is
That
lower
was a
risk.
bit of a shock. Where can a tenant come and pay that upfront? What tenant does with 3 months deposit? That's not a normal person in the street.
Yeah, I'll do that in the product seminar and explain that to you, and it will give you an idea. It's actually very simple. I'll just use a simple example. I don't want to take all the time with that. Simple. If you've got a transaction of R1 million, the guy owes 350,000 short-term debt, and he's got a rental that he paid for the next year of 250,000. Now, instead of paying his debt, I pay the rental. And I add 100,000 to settle some of his debt, and the rest he pays off his debt instead of paying your rent. That's
So this
fine.
is almost like a pot or a kitty. So we're almost investing in shares in Wealth Assist. We're not buying something
Every
specific.
transaction is an individual transaction, property that you will take transfer of, or you will take a record of, or
And
that,
you'll manage it,
and we manage everything.
everything from the tenants.
Yeah.
So you have a big staff on hand, obviously,
Yes.
and agents. and all
Oh,
that.
big is relative, but
Because I know I've also got,
17.
I've got properties and it,
Yeah.
yeah, it takes a lot of work and effort.
Okay, thank you for that. So there's a lot of questions come through here. I think you can have your work cut out for you,
Yeah.
Daniel, because a lot of them seems to. So from Mark Lunar, he said, what are the problems you have experienced so far? Contracts sound good in theory, but what if a party does not stick to them?
Yeah. Okay, so if anybody tells you, I always say that in every seminar, that they've never had a problem, run, because maybe your deal's going to be the first one. Okay, so we had, I would say probably, I've actually worked out on some of the, what was our percentage, and I would probably think it's about 3.5% on all our transactions that we had issues with. Okay, gives you a good idea. Most of them was in our first 3 to 5 years. Okay, because there was nothing existing like what we do. So we had to implement something and we had to test it. And I sometimes, when I read contracts of even 5 years back, I actually laugh when I read them and think, did I do deals like that? And things like that. So, and we have learned through a lot of mistakes that a lot of people made. But fortunately, that we have most of our I would call it probably about 5 out of 300 plus transactions, we had to physically pay the investor capital back, which we agreed to do. Okay, and that is when there was real problems, and then gave them a bit of a better deal to make up in the future. So yes, so the type of things that have happened in the past is some of these things where people don't pay the rental for a certain term, means we have to sell the property, and then they restrict us to get access. Then we have to evict them, which we had literally 2 cases like that, and over the last 12 years, and those we've actually literally put them up, and unfortunately had to go that route. It's not where you want to go, but we also have to protect the investor's money in the process. Yeah, so I think that's probably the kind of worst case scenario type of stuff. Lots of them, we have mediation meetings. We've got a specific program that when you don't pay, when something don't happen, which we will make available for you, what we call your default procedures. And you can work through that and determine if you think that works well.
Excellent, good. So we got a question here from Anonymous. What is the minimum amount needed to start with the wealth assess method?
Only 10 million.
That's why there's a lot of these people here.
Now we've got excellent investors. No, look, from a cash perspective, we start off normally 100,000 officially. If you speak to Daniel, it's 50. I don't know, but we have it as 100,000. But the reality is, what we do is we, on the cash side, we actually co-invest. We put the guys together. So you'll be shocked to understand the guy that's got 10 million and 9.5 million already invested. There's only 500,000 left. Then you can't do a deal on 600,000. So suddenly we just add these 2 guys together and they invest. So that's one thing. And from a bond perspective, going through the whole process, the lowest we did was a combination of a 300,000 bond and a 1.5 bond to do a 1.8 deal. And that gave the guy that couldn't get higher than 350 at that stage access to start, but that's typically where it becomes viable, at least enough, I would say, 500,000 on a single case. Yeah.
Okay, we got another question off the floor before we get back to the online audience.
Okay, good evening. My name is Lipson. Yesterday, I did have a consultation with one of your consultants. I got 2 properties. One is paid up. I'm in position of a title deed. So one is still financed by the bank. So I needed to, do you call it a collateral, whereby I can get some sort of equity from the paid up property to expand my investment? So, but when I check your product, like it seems like you don't offer something like that.
For the investor.
Yes.
Look, we can do that, and I don't know if you actually spoke to me. It must may be possible.
No, it's as a what it or something.
Okay, it's so
But yeah, Wendell, yeah.
Oh, Wendell. Okay. Yeah, I think the challenge with that is this. If you want to unlock money for an investment, and you tell me it is other property investments, and I know I offer kind of some of the highest returns in the country, then at the same time, if I give you money, which is very expensive, okay, you want to earn 17% as an investor. That means I still have to make profit above that. So it means that we're talking that money is going to cost you 22%. How can you make money if you lend money at 22%? Then I would not advise you to do that. Rather, let's come and see what else we can do to unlock your equity or do something, and we'll give good advice on that. But I would not give you money. And any person who actually approaches us for that purpose, I tell them straight. I said, I hope you know what you're doing, because there's not a lot of investments that's going to cover the 22 and make some money on it. You know, so that's what I would say is my answer on that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Right, so if I were to invest, as Sibu Siso said, if I were to invest through Wealth Assist for a duration agreed period, is the property insured for any unforeseen circumstances?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we actually, on our side, budget for it. It's part of our feasibility. We pay the short-term insurance on the building. All of that is actually budgeted for and paid from our side. We don't allow anyone else to pay it. And we even go further by ensuring the lives of the real estate owner as well as the real estate investor, depending on what structure the investor go and invest in, so that if there's a unforeseen death during this period, we at least can settle the deal in the estate of the deceased and not affect the other parties, and still be able to conclude the initial intent of what we wanted to do. So yes.
Just maybe add that payment of the insurance is the first year's in advance. So it's covered for the full year, everything.
Yeah. Okay, so we got a question again on risk in the Wealth Assist model, if any. Or is it like Daniel said, term rental is agreed even before the term ends?
So the rental lies on trust, and we pay out the rental. But that rental payment includes your rates and taxes bill. It includes our collection fees. It actually includes everything. Even if there would have been insurance, it would have covered that, and all those type of things. So we make sure that nothing can go wrong on that side. Does it mean that the client can default? Yes, he can still default. So how can he default? If he doesn't pay his debt and he has to recover and buy his property back, that moment we have got, we run the whole thing from, we've got a company, Debt Buddy, that we are contracted to, that works with us. And what they do is they manage the client, make sure that they get their credit score sorted. The moment that the credit score gets impaired more than what it's supposed to, or they make new debt. Like even you'll see your contract that you read will say, if they make new debt, we sell the property, because it means they won't recover. So I'm not going to wait for 24 months before I sell the property then. We will then address it immediately when they breach in such a manner like that, or they don't pay the debt off. Let's say they had to cover their debt in 12 months and they don't make the payment. They make those payments to us. We pay it to the contractor, and they make sure that they settle those debts. So all those type of things are covered in the agreement very, very clearly, so that they know if they breach those clauses, we have to take action. No.
Great. We have a question here from Anonymous. Can I invest, although I have no property, and some cash? I've never owned a property and possibly could apply for a bond. I think you kind of touched on it already, but maybe you want to reiterate that.
I always say if you want to start off with investment, this is a good place to start, to learn from it. But the fact that we can, you can start with little cash and co-invest, and the fact that you can, build a portfolio where, I always say, if you've got a paycheck, you should be able to get some finance. So come, let's do a pre-approval and see what it comes down to. And on the other hand, help you structure so that you will be ready in a couple of months or a year to be able to apply.
Okay, we had another question on the money side, which the figures. We'll come back to you now, just hold on. And then we got Vim who asked, please explain step by step, how do we get going on investing in this?
Oh, that's you. Or should I call you now?
Well, if it's the paperwork, I will call Ina. But what you'll do is after this webinar, we'll actually send you a link so that we can have a quick chat. The thing with our investors, we only work with mandated investors, which means we have to go through a bit of a process, onboarding process with you. Otherwise, you never understand what we do, how we do it, and specifically, we need to understand what you want to do and how it fits into your metrics. So, onboarding process is very easy, but we go through a process and we'll explain it to you in detail when we meet you it's not a tech investment, not yet, but for now it's in person.
Great stuff. Question from the floor?
Two things. The one question is, how many of your deals are financeable? Like, can you finance with a bank as an investor?
How many?
Yeah, or which type? If that is my question correct?
Let me try again after that.
So let's say you need investors, you don't need investors, but you want investors. So can an investor go and finance that with the
Definitely can.
And all the deals, or just some of them?
Deals you can find. I've got a good example, and fortunately, because Gerard have given me background on your stuff when I spoke to Yandere and them, so I'm not going to mention anything. Don't worry.
It's fine.
But he earns quite a high salary, and he qualifies for quite high mortgages. I'm not talking about you now. I'm talking about the other client. But in his case, he doesn't use cash. He gave an initial, I think, call it a R1 million investment. That was cash, and from there on, he invested more than 5 million in mortgages. That's a choice. Obviously, we'll guide you in that and what is wise and what's not wise and that type of thing. So,
okay, and then lastly, yes, it does. Thank you. And then just another. So, if I look at your risk model, everyone asks about your risk. I know a little bit more about your products now. Everything's covered, but if say, so it's just a question. So you buy at 30% below market, and you have to go and sell. And if you don't sell it at that level, then you're going to start losing money, right? So that's your biggest risk if you have to sell at 50%.
No, I just wanted to get in there because the reality is the real estate owner can lose some of his equity, which means that if we go up to the highest levels of 75%, for your capital portion to be touched, that property value needs to drop on sale as low as 75%. Which, and if you look at our contracts, we actually sign up front the values at which level we'll sell in future. So it's like an agent mandate, but it's not negotiated when we're going to sell. It's negotiated up front. So in other words, they can lose their 25%, and that's why we haven't seen that come across our desk in the last 2.5 years from my involvement, we haven't seen it.
Just to add something there, because the product is set up that way that we don't, if that property needs to be sold, just because I don't know if you know that about the product. Let's take R1 million property. We bought it at 750,000, all costs inclusive. That's the story. Now, the guy, after a year and a half, loses his job, he can't recover, or whatever. We paid the full amount, but he can't buy it back. Okay. Then that property gets sold, call it for 900,000. Okay. So you, as the investor, gets the first 750,000. Okay. Then we get our percentage. And anything above that in a normal situation, if that property would have sold for $1 million, that previous owner would have got that money back. Additional. Okay, so you've made your profit, we made our profit. We don't kick the guy when he's down, so we actually give him the balance. Okay. Now that means that if he prohibits sales, if he is difficult, if he whatever he makes and he doesn't cooperate, that means he's actually affecting his own proceeds and his own bottom line. So that's why people don't do that. We literally had one case, I think in 13 years, where the person wanted to go to court, and when they 2 days before court, they kind of settled the thing up front. So those type of things is why it's not really something that will be an issue, because there's always enough equity to cover your. That's why I'm saying if he paid for 2 years or a year, whatever, remember that you still have 3 months left. If it was a 2-year contract, you'll have 2 years money there. So that means it will sell definitely before the next year. And then you still have 25% equity, which actually going to go to him if we don't use it. I hope it answers.
Okay, great. We still got 4 more questions, and they're quite important ones. There's some really good questions coming through. So from Anonymous, 58, I have some retirement funds, no employment as of January 2025. What can I do to earn an income? Well, first of all, get a job or get a sideline. At 58 years old, you shouldn't be sitting doing nothing. You should be getting, either you get an asset that's going to give you. I do not own a property. I'm living with mum. We just sold her property and I'm renting for now. And this can also be answered tomorrow as well. No, none of us, we're going to answer it right now. You need to get some income like very soon in whatever form, whether it's in a part-time job or getting a property that delivers you income. I don't know if you guys want to add to that, because there's some people think there's a passive thing called passive income. It doesn't really exist.
Does he own a property?
No.
No. So, and he.
What can I do to earn income? That's what he's saying.
Okay.
But at the same time, he's got some retirement funds which are sitting on the side.
Okay.
But he's not employed, and this is the issue. So he can deploy some of the retirement funds, but you know but he would still have to do something else.
Is the retirement funds currently giving him or her an income?
I
Is
think
the
it's
first
probably
question.
locked it down.
Yeah, so I think give us a call. Give us a call. We can see how we can assist. But I agree. And just if you really get to understand all our products, just remember when you refer a person, you get commission. So good stuff.
There's a job.
There it is. There's a job immediately.
I just want to add, we need to change our mindsets. If you're going to live till 90, you've got 32 years left. There's too much time to work. And this Jewish rabbi spoke online at one stage. He says, but the problem is the word retirement is not somewhere in what's it? It's not the Bible. It's not in the original language.
No.
So 58, you're young, sir.
Exactly. Absolutely. So Marlon asks, what happens if an investor dies during the term of the contract or wants to cash out prematurely? Okay. What happens if an investor dies during the term of the contract or wants to cash out prematurely?
Okay, so that's that contracts are actually built around that. So that should a person pass away during the term, and it happened with 2 of our clients during the last 13 years, and then the money will pay, the insurance will pay to the attorney's trust account, and that attorney will then make sure that he give execution. So if the whole idea was that you would have bought it back, then it will be money will pay. If it's the investor that passed, then it will pay the investor's estate, and the property goes back to you. If it was the other way around, the property will go to your estate and the money will go to the investor.
Okay. Is Wealth Assist audited, and is the audit report available for review?
Well, you'll see in one of our information pieces that there's actual figures that's given, returns, and it is audited.
Okay.
I think there's a question now.
I just want to latch on to the financing question. obviously, and you can't speak on behalf of the bank, I realize that. Obviously, if it's a finance or a capital growth transaction, you're responsible for the financing of what if you take a bond to finance that. But in an income scenario, how much credence have you found does the bank give to the income that's going to be generated over and above my own income? How much leeway do they give you to say, of your expected 17% return, we'll take X amount into consideration?
Okay, then we'll look at where's our specialist? Yeah. Marty. Okay. Well, okay. So we've actually got Marty here, who's a specialist in that. So she will be assisting you if you're going to use mortgages and that type of thing. But in most of these situations, if it covers the percentage that you qualify for, call it whatever that is. Okay. So, sorry, I must get back to the heart of the question. Just ask again.
Just how much of the expected income have you found the bank?
They're going to use the lease. Okay. And then there's different banks have different options. Okay. So for instance, they would go to, I can say more or less 50% at least. Some banks, if you've got more than 2 or 3 properties, that means they're going to use the full income. So it all differs depending on which bank it is, what your current status is yourself. Yeah. In your position. But we can do that calculation for you upfront.
Excellent. Okay, while we just pass the microphone back over there, I'm just going to take another question. Just hold on a moment. What are some of the transfer delay measures have you put in place when it comes to distressed property that end up taking an extended period to transfer? Opportunity costs suffered because of this. Comment.
I always wanted to say that person is not here tonight. Next question.
All right, so Gerard would like me to answer that when he always says, listen, Daniel, that's not my part of the firm. It's why is the transfers taking so long? And it's very true. Yeah, it's very true. It happens due to the fact that there's a normal things like upliftment costs. So if there was a judgment or that type of thing from a bank or whatever, then there's other things that plays a role in it. If there's arrears, it's been handed over to arrears. There's a department that deals with it. That's not the bank themselves, and you have to go through those processes. So it doesn't always mean that it's going to happen, but we have built in a clause in every transaction during the time period that if it goes over 4 months, you start earning your income from 4 months. Okay, so a normal transfer process should take 3 months. So we say and there should be some small delays, but if it goes over 4 months, from the 4th month, you start earning your returns, irrespective if it's registered or not.
Okay, great. Your question?
So just from my understanding, so the contracts are triple net leases, so meaning the tenant via Wealth Assist pays the municipal accounts and is responsible for the maintenance. How do we as investors know that accounts have been paid and the maintenance has been done?
Well, the division internally collects the money on behalf of the investor, and we pay it over. So
now you're asking how do they know?
Oh,
yeah. How do they know? That's a good.
That's
question.
a good question. So there's an investment report that goes out every month between the 10th and the 15th, and in there you should be getting notes if it wasn't paid. And if it's late, with the municipality accounts, we see so many times the money was paid over, but it's not reflecting on the account by the time that we do the report. And I think with our new software on its way, it will be much more automated. The moment that allocation is done, that you'll actually get an automated mail confirming the rent was paid, on time, the municipal account, the option fee, which is also important, and you'll know immediately.
Yeah, I think just to add to that is also the fact that now with the rental warranty, it will obviously be paid up front. And what we do is on our current transactions, because we have got trust money on our account for every single transaction, which means that if by the 28th we haven't received the rental from the tenant, in that case, we physically pay from the trust account. We use that and then pay that over. And then as soon as the rental come in, we top up the deposit again to make sure that you receive your rental in time and the rates are paid in time and whatever that needs to be.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to take two more questions and then I'm going to ask a little wrap up. Ferial, are you still there?
I am indeed, but I wanted to say something about what Dan, with the question that just came out now, right? And that for me, the question that they just asked, that's the beauty of this investment. I really don't have to have gray hairs, and I don't, right? At 52 years, I don't have gray hairs. Look at Daniel's, his is really gray because he gets to worry about that. What I'm saying is that is the beauty.
Let's use the beauty, eh?
Exactly, because it's like before I had to be concerned about is the rent paid, is the this, is the yeah. I don't have to do it anymore. So obviously you do keep, I get my statements and there's things I check on it and all that kind of stuff. But I think that is what makes this investment really great, is that I don't have to worry. And then one other thing is there's an earlier question that was about mortgages. One of the things you guys didn't mention was that those living in other countries, and particularly if you are a foreigner, so in my case, I'm still South African as well. So we get, we can get up to 100% mortgages. Whereas if you're a British person or whatever, you can actually get up to 50% mortgages, which is also really great, just for those listening and you're living in other countries. And then my daughter's just graduated, and she hasn't got a full-time job. She was doing a part-time job, and fortunately, because she's earning pounds, there's a really great exchange rate for her, right? So I've already gotten her, right? You're going to go get a mortgage and get this started. So I'm saying it's never too young for you to start. In fact, it's best to start when you're young.
Good early start. That's the answer.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Ferial. So what I'm going to do now is we got two questions, and I suggest that we don't going to go into too much detail again because we have covered two of them from Cruz and Philemon. And but what I'm going to actually, if we could hand over the mic again to Mark. Mark, you got a mic. And I just got to say one piece of advice where people can walk away with that's been sitting on the fence about investing hands-free. Maybe you just got some lasting comment. Ferial added to this. Thanks for yours, Ferial. Mark, yours?
Thanks, Neil. So I think the thing with property investment is that whether it's physical residential property investment or investing with Wealth Assist, do it now. I think it was someone that said 10 years ago was the best time to invest, and today is the second best time. So just do it.
I just want to say, Mark always told me the story of how when he started off, he never planned to be where the number of properties that he owns. And I don't want to go too much into detail of that, but the bottom line is that is, as he said, if I didn't start, I didn't know I'm going to be here in this time. But when I started and I had my first experiences, I could easily go and do the next one. And it becomes easier and easier on the end of the day. And I just think with what we do, we just actually take your hand. And I'm always saying, we don't say you should only invest in our products. You can invest. We'll even help you find good buy-to-let products if you really want them, that type of thing. Then if we produce that type of stuff and you see the results, you will see how it will change your momentum in the whole thing. But if you don't start. Yeah.
Great. So, Jandre, do you want to give your wrap up? You've skipped our Jandre.
No, he's got one.
Yeah, got one. Oh, he's got his own one. Jandre, do you want to give your final thoughts? I know we're running over a little bit of time, so I do want to get to sort of wrap up time. So there are some people. Are there still a lot of people online? They're still in their slippers and pajamas, and they're still sitting there, staying up, listening to all the questions. Jandre, your final piece of advice to everybody.
Yeah, I think regardless of what you invest in and what you decide your portfolio looks like, I think the best thing you can do is kind of dip your toes in it and start. Whether it's something small like saying, you're going to take $500 a month and you're going to put that in a money market account, or you're going to slowly but surely pay off your credit card debt. I think one of the biggest things that we struggle with is change, is trying to conquer these giant issues that we have. But all of them are practically solvable if we, break them down into small, manageable pieces.
Excellent. Great.
Hmm?
Absolutely. So, Gerard, your final thoughts?
Is it not?
It's hello.
It's me.
Yeah.
All right.
Dan already had to say he skipped
Oh,
his
yeah.
turn now.
So I just wanted to say to you that my focus is to assist investors and people to achieve their goals. And, I was, as an example, the lady came to us and she said, listen, I've got 2 million, but I haven't got a house to live in. So now we're planning on having a live affordable, at affordable levels and still invest and be able to use what she's got. And that is our focus. We really take it to heart, as we do with the real estate owners, to save them, to save households, homes. We do the same with investors. So please come and hopefully we can assist you. Thank you.
Great. So I think the big takeaway, the portfolio must work for you and not the other way around. Certainly, you don't want to manage all those tenants and, so hands-free, there's the pros, there's the cons. I think you've heard most of it tonight. I think we've had some really good input. Thank you for joining us live. We hope that you are wiser and that you're going to take the next big step on your investment journey. To our online audience, thank you for all your questions. There is another session when are you running? What time? Tomorrow? Is it, there's a follow-up webinar. When is that going to be?
We haven't actually decided, but
Oh, okay. No, I'm just thinking in terms of the in terms of the detail. Okay, so for those of you who want to come and join our webinar, it is tomorrow at 12 o'clock. And we're going to be talking about a very interesting one. For only 250 Rand, you can actually evict your tenant. So this insurance thing is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And 250 Rand guaranteed you get the tenant out within a month. It's a proper, it's legal. It's a
qualified monthly.
Yes, 250 Rand a month.
that's not bad.
And it's probably, so come and join us tomorrow. It's at 12 o'clock. Just go to rei.co.za. But first of all, if you want to reach out to the Wealth Assist team, I think there is going to be a QR code that's going to pop up on the screen. So you can put up a QR code, and there we go. There's a nice little QR code over there, and you can just hold up your cam and then obviously complete the form and follow the process over there. Read the Real Estate Investor magazine and come join our webinars. I think there's a slide over there. There you can sign up. We've also got a QR code where you can go stick your phone up and join us over there. Got a free membership. The magazine comes out monthly. We've got daily news updates. You've got to start quoting our news. We're writing news now every day. And with all the latest in the news, newsletters, our video interviews, that's new. We've got a property personality, 2, sometimes 3 a week. We've got our weekly webinars on Wednesdays and Thursdays, masterclasses. So please, and it's free, everybody. Yeah. It doesn't cost you anything. So please join us. And I just want to thank everybody here this evening, from Mark Day, Jandre Smith, Daniel, and of course, Gerard from Wealth Assist. And to you, the audience, thank you. And I think they all deserve a round of applause. So thank you very much. And lastly, our online audience, thank you very much. We will please reach out to the Wealth Assist team, or if you've got any queries, you can just go to info@rei.co.za. And to all of you, thank you for joining us. Invest wisely and freely. And may your portfolio always be more hands-free than hands-off. Good night, everybody. Good night to us. Thank you, guys.